Please remain seated. The show will begin in 3, 2...
Like a Hellcat.
Hello, ghoul friends, those who are freaky chic, fans of the supernatural, and all things spooky. I'm your host, FandomTraveller87, and welcome back to my channel, my very own dark, creepy corner of the world that explores the unknown. And before I continue on with this video, I just want to say thank you to those who have been very appreciative and supportive of all the time, energy, and effort and passion that goes into these projects. Your comments have been so wonderful and insightful, and I'm always striving towards improvement for my work. I just love telling a good ghost story, don't you? Now, the ones that are the scariest are the ones that actually happened. And it's not just ghosts in general. Sometimes it's stuff that happens in everyday life. The places we work. The places where we get our education. The places that we've been, had visited, or perhaps lived in. And this one creepypasta that I've currently have been spending a lot of time working on. It's based off of a urban legend that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Bloody Mary. Now, who hasn't in their teen and college years? Have any of you ever played this game? Well, maybe if you have your own personal, true horrifying experience with playing Bloody Mary, be sure to share it down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you have to share. And speaking of which, if any of you out there have a listener story that you would love to have submitted, perhaps your own creepypasta story, or something that actually did happen to you, please go directly to my business email at hopegivesyoowings.com@gmail.com. If you wish to remain anonymous, that is fine as well. Alright, let's dive back into the crypt for part 2 of this story. There's a ghost that haunts my bathroom at my dorm. A Bloody Mary-inspired creepypasta written and narrated by yours truly, FandomTraveller87. I was nestled in my blankets, typing on my laptop in the middle of submitting a report to my professor, before proceeding to switch off the light by my bed. It was nearing midnight, and I was beginning to doze off. I could hear Diane and Louisa laughing on the other side of the wall, where the party was still going on inside of Darlene's dorm. I'd gotten out of bed to get a drink of water, when I heard a scratching noise coming from my bathroom. I stopped abruptly and listened again for a moment, wondering if I was just imagining things. I was awfully tired after all, due to the long hours of studying for finals and stuff. The door to the bathroom was now open wide, and the light bulb above the mirror, which once belonged to my late mother, flickered. I thought back to the story Darlene told earlier about Mary Moore, and how my dorm used to be hers. No, I thought to myself, shaking my head. It's just a story. Ghosts don't exist. Then I heard mumbling coming from the other side of the wall. It was chanting, both Diane and Louisa's voices. I pressed my ear against the wall, and the chanting became clear. They were repeating Bloody Mary a total of 12 times, and there was a lightning strike. Thunder roared, and the wind howled and moaned. Then all got quiet after a couple minutes. And then I heard my friends scream. Their cries of terror sent chills down my spine as glass shattered and the sound of inhumane breathing of guttural, animalistic noises bounced off the walls. There was a loud thud of something heavy hitting right smack into the far left wall where I stood. I called for my friends' names in a panicked tone, but got no reply. I ran next door, and the door to the dorm was halfway ajar. The living room looked like a tornado hit the place. Dishes, laundry, potted plants, popcorn, everything was spilled on the carpet, and the only other two people that remained in the dorm was Diane and Darlene, who were practically vegetables at this point. They were paralyzed at the grisly scene in the bathroom, and I rushed over to them, and my eyes widened. There were huge blood splatters and shattered mirror pieces, and Louisa. She was completely skinned, sliced in half, and her eyes were ripped out as well as her tongue. Her jaw was missing, and her intestines were wrapped around her neck. She was strung up by wires, too, and a metal hook was lodged in her backside. Her ribcage was sticking out of her mutilated flesh, and she was already starting to decompose. The police were called, and there was an investigation that lasted 8 months. Darlene, as well as her friends, were suspected of murdering Louisa, but without physical evidence, the authorities had nothing to go on, especially since they passed their polygraphs, and there was no DNA found on Louisa that belonged to anyone, human or alive, that is, so it couldn't be identified of who the killer was. I tried getting something out of both girls, who were too afraid to speak. I asked them why they refused to tell me anything. It's because they swore, they said. They swore to stay silent, otherwise they would be next. Life carried on as normal after that. Diane and I drifted further apart. Then I noticed a lot of changes in her. She used to be so warm and outgoing, and then whenever she would pass me in the hall, there was so much hatred in her gaze. Another year had gone by, and I was so focused on my studies, I had pushed any memories of the past in the back of my mind. But as much as I wanted to forget, I couldn't erase the look of pure evil on Diane's face. Whenever I crossed paths with her, I kept my head down and dodged or avoided any sort of possible interaction. I had this feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach. There was something seriously wrong with Diane. Then October rolled around once more, and Diane, I saw, was dressed pretty goth-like. She approached me at my locker and asked if I was interested in joining her and Darlene for another slumber party back at Darlene's dorm. I refused, but Diane looked like she sincerely wanted to fix our broken friendship. I could see that she looked sorrowful and wanted to make things right, so I reluctantly agreed to tag along. So it was just me, Darlene, and Diane, hanging out in the living room listening to music. And then Darlene had an idea that would turn out to be a huge mistake. She brought out a Ouija board, and I immediately went fuck that. But they both laughed and said it was just a game, that nothing bad could come out of it. I come from a religious family, and it was bad enough to be the black sheep of one who wasn't accepting of my sexuality, let alone my other issues. One thing I know now that anyone should know about Ouija boards, the utmost crucial thing, is that they are doorways, much like when little kids open the door for strangers to be invited in. Once someone or something is invited in, it is harder to get them or it to leave. Well, Darlene and Diane were so eager to get in contact with Mary Moore's ghost that anything I was trying to argue, it only fell on deaf ears and was dismissed. They placed the board in front of them and offered me the planchette, the piece with the clear lens built in its center. Ideally, the piece is supposed to move across the board when a spirit is responding to a question, typically replying yes or no, or spelling out words. I didn't want to participate, so I stayed in the kitchen, trying to not pay any attention to what they were doing. After asking if anyone was there with us a couple times, there was no response. Nobody was touching the planchette as it remained stationary on the board. Then suddenly the planchette moved, and I immediately ran over as Darlene called to me in excitement. She pointed at the planchette as it spelled out the first two letters. She said the first two were I-A, and we were all staring at the board, watching intently as the planchette spelled out an entire sentence. I am here. Darlene shoved the planchette into my hands and told me to ask the board a question. I didn't want to do this, but I was thinking to myself that either one of them was just trying to scare me. Either Darlene or Diane had moved the piece, and I was sure of that. So I sat down and placed the piece back on the board, my eyes glued to it the whole time. I asked for the ghost to give its name. The piece began to move on its own again, and it slowly spelled out MARYMORE. I felt sick. What have I done? Then we heard a weird noise in the bathroom, and we all peered in, but the bathroom was empty, and we figured we'd take the game to the next level. However, what the girls had in mind was pretty mean. I was shoved into the bathroom hard, and they had the door barricaded. I couldn't get out. I begged and pleaded, but all they could do was laugh. I decided, after years of torment and abuse, I was going to get back at them. I just wanted to scare them a little is all. I lit a few candles and turned on the sink. I then stared at my own reflection in the mirror and slowly spinning around as I said Bloody Mary 3 times, while still keeping my eyes locked on the tinted mirror. Nothing happened. I decided to fake an asthma attack, and it was all too easy to convince them that it was well known for me to have them frequently when I didn't have my inhaler. So it didn't take them long to even be freaked out by the choking noises. They immediately removed the dresser and ran in only for me to pull them into the bathroom and catching them off guard as I continued chanting Bloody Mary another 9 times in a row. I then quickly locked the door with the key I swiped from Darlene's left pant pocket and tossed it to the side somewhere. They were angry and then calm at first, having told me to let them out. They started banging on the door. The air grew colder and colder, and I ignored their sobs. The lights flickered. The doorknob rattled as Darlene and Diane were hyperventilating and panicking. Then they started screaming. I didn't react. I no longer felt like myself. I felt like I was liberated. I felt free of those who made my life miserable. I just wanted to scare them, that's all. Well, the plan worked all too well. Glass shattered. I heard them yelling, "No, no, please!" My head was pounding, and I felt dizzy. I soon blacked out and collapsed to the floor. I eventually woke up in the hospital, and I was interrogated by police. I initially became a prime suspect when it was discovered that Diane and Darlene had gone missing, and that I was the last person who saw them. The bathroom was just covered in blood smears and scratches and broken glass. No sign of Diane and Darlene. Ever since then, bizarre and disturbing things occurred. A butterfly effect. One by one, some of my classmates had psychotic episodes. They were yowling and foaming at the mouth, convulsing. Some had gotten crushed by large objects. Jeremy Lane got crushed by a vending machine by the gymnasium entrance and was killed. Some were found with broken necks, missing eyes and jaws in random places at the university. There was so much death and insanity happening every week that I just knew that the ghost of Mary Moore was behind it all.